everybody, welcome to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron, and today I've got a project that I'm really excited about. We're getting back on the burnout truck just for a day. I need a little break from the other stuff that I'm doing, and like the next step on Cherry Pie is start putting more accessories and stuff back on the motor. I got to paint all the brackets and stuff to do that, and it's not warm enough to paint. So kind of taking a break, kind of taking a day for myself, doing something I want to do, and that would be the burnout truck. So here it is. I got her kind of up open where I can get around her and work and whatnot, and I'm gonna do some more work on the front end sheet metal. So I want to keep it all steel like I told you guys before, and I'm stripping down everything that I can strip down to lighten it. And I was gonna do a one-piece lift off front clip. So tack weld the hood to the fenders, weld everything else together. You need the hood off or open to do some work, you pick it up, lift it off, set it down on the ground in front of the truck. But 90% of the time, whenever I'm doing anything, I'm by myself. So I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I won't be able to lift a full steel hood or a full steel front clip off this truck by myself. I don't want to like drag it off or let it slam on the ground. I'd never get it back on, yada, yada, yada. Well, last time my dad was here, I was talking to him about it, and he was like, what's that movie you really like? And I was like, which one? He goes, the one that's got that old Chevy and the whole front clip flips up. And I was like, oh, Lane Blacktop, 55 Chevy. Awesome movie, love it. He goes, why don't you do a flip up front end like that has? And I was like, you know what, you're right. Why don't I do a flip up front end like that has? So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna put a full flip forward front clip on the burnout truck. I've already got some ideas in my head. I've been kind of scrounging parts to make it work. At least get me to a point where it'll flip and see what else I need to do for about 2 days now. And I think I got everything I need, and I'm ready to get started. So I still have to gut the inner frame out of that fender to make it like I did that one in the other video. And I'm gonna see how much weight I can take out of this hood, but still have it have structure and not be all loose and flopping and everything else. So I may do a little bit of filming on lightening up the hood. Not gonna do the fender because I already made the video of doing the other one. So if you haven't seen videos on this truck and you want to see what I did to lighten up all the pieces, here's a pretty cool video. If you go back, I'll try to put it up here so you can find it easy. But I still need to fill in this hole on this. I still need to fill in the holes where the badge goes. And the back of this fender is all dented in and needs to be pulled out and body worked. Some body work that needs to be done up here on the front of the hood. I am not gonna do any of that right now because the doors need body work. There's other stuff that I'm doing to the cab that's gonna require body work that I haven't gotten to yet. So I'm just gonna get everything built the way I want it, and then I'll go do all the body work on the truck at one time. So for today, for right now, I'm just gonna lighten up the parts so I can tack weld them together or weld them together, and it'll be one piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and get everything, get the hood taken off, get the driver's side fender taken off, and I'm gonna lighten up that driver's side fender, see what I can do about the hood, and then we'll get started on the cool part. All right, well, I got this fender all trimmed down. I did leave this mounting tab on there, just, dang truck's driving by, just so that I can mount it to get everything lined up. And then once I get everything tacked together, I'm gonna go back and cut some of that off, or as much of it as I can, or whatever. But anyways, fender's done. I got the hood sitting over here, and my idea with the hood is I don't want it all floppy and oil cannon and everything, but it's got a hard body line down the center, which is going to give it rigidness, and it has a body line here and one in the same spot on the other side, which is going to give it rigidness too. So I'm going to leave the dual skin on the sides, the back, and up in the front, but I'm going to come along here and I'm going to cut all of this out, and then I'm gonna, you can kind of see my, well, I don't know if you can see my marks I drew with my finger here. I'm gonna leave this center brace in the middle just to kind of stiffen it up a little bit, but I'm gonna cut all around that. So all this stuff here and all this stuff here is gonna be gone. So I'm gonna get set up and we'll pop that out of there, see how it turns out. I got my cutout all the way around the perimeter where I want it. I got my brace cut in the center. I actually still have to cut across there. I just realized that. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and cut that real quick. But after I get done cutting that, I'm gonna take this really thin putty knife scraper and I'm gonna go in here. And if you can see this little bulge of glue sticking up here all over the place, it's panel bond. That's how they hold that inner framing to the outer framing in the middle of the hood. On the outsides it's got pinch welds, spot welds, whatever you want to call them, but in the center there it's all panel bond. So I'm going to go in there with that little scraper. Got a hammer here if I need it to help along with cutting through it, but I don't want to get in there and start trying to pry that framing out, because I don't want to bend the top skin of the hood, dent it or put a bunch of marks in it. So it's already got a dent in the front. I'm going to fix that when I do the body work, but I don't want to cause any more body work for myself than I have to. So I'm going to go all along this and break that panel bond loose. It might take a little while, but it should save me some time in the long run. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that last little bit that I forgot to trim, and then I'll bring the camera back out and do another time lapse of getting that framing out. As you saw in the time lapse, I got the bracing, all the panel bond cut loose, got the bracing out, and then I went back and scraped all the panel bond off. And I know it's not much, but it's all together, it might be a pound or two of weight, and when you're doing lightning stuff, every pound matters. That, and it's very flammable. If I ever have an engine compartment fire or backfire or something like that, and that stuff goes up, it burns for a while. So I want to get as much of that out as I could. I got 90% of it. There's still a little bit more I just noticed I can get. It's quick, it ain't no big deal. But the hood is gutted. It is still pretty solid, and I'd say it probably weighs about half what it did. It's light enough now that the wind's blowing and it's rocking the hood. So that's kind of cool. Took some weight off. It's still sturdy enough for what I'm doing. All these panels are kind of flimsy, but by the time I get them all braced and welded together to where it can flip, it'll strengthen up and be plenty good for what I'm doing with it. I've never done this before. I've never made a flip up hood. I've seen fiberglass ones a lot, and like I said, I saw the one on the 55 Chevy in Lane Blacktop, and that's kind of where I got the idea from. And I don't have a plan. I mean, I've kind of got a plan in my head, but I don't have like a drawing, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Just kind of winging it and hoping for the best. But so far, it seems to be going the way I planned, and just gonna keep going and see what happens. I'm going to put that fender back on the truck next, get it tied back in with my bumper filler panel, and get it bolted up there, which it's not going to stay bolted once everything gets connected. Those bolts are all coming out. So I'm going to do that. And then as far as this, what's left of this core support goes, I only need this trim part, and then this piece back here is like almost like a piece of 2-inch square tubing. I mean, it's stamped, so it's not 2-inch square tubing, but it's like 2-inch square tubing. It's a good brace there for the top part of the hood. And when you guys see how I'm going to do my bracing and my flip mechanism, you'll understand why I want to keep that. But with that being said, I have a new idea of how to mount my lights, and my bracing should be plenty strong, so I shouldn't need the headlight, where the headlight buckets go, to attach to the fenders for more strength or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and buzz those off, and then I'm going to take the bump stops out, and I think I'm going to grab, I don't know, maybe a 2-inch hole saw, maybe a 3-inch hole saw or something, and I'm just going to go along the whole top part of this where it's fairly flat and put a hole saw, a hole in it all the way across. Now, it'd be cool, speed hot rod stuff, if I dimple dyed it or something. I don't have dimple dyes, and even if I did, that would be a lot of extra work, because you're never gonna see it, like, ever, unless the hood's flipped up and you wanna lay down on the engine and crawl up there and look. You'll never be able to see it. So I'm not worried about the looks. I'm just worried about taking off more weight, and that's an easy way to do it. So I'm just gonna drill a bunch of holes in that and put that fender back on, and then we'll move on to the fun stuff. Then we're actually gonna start attaching everything, starting to put bracing in, all that good stuff. So here we go. As you saw in the time lapse, I don't know. I thought I did something before I was working on the core support, or the upper core support, but I might not have. If I did, you saw it. But I've been working on the core support. The camera I was doing the time lapse on died somewhere along the way. I'm not sure at what point, but you guys saw I was using the hole saw and putting holes in this thing like I said I was going to. I'm not gonna say I put in as many as I could, but pretty much anywhere there was a flat spot, I put a hole. And then I went back, and when I cut this off before, I just kind of raw cut it just to get it in there, to get the front end mounted so it was easier to move it. So I went back with a cutoff wheel and my little body saw, and then a flapper disc, and I cleaned up as much of it as I could and took off as much of it as I could, because, you know, I might only be taking off a pound at a time, but if I take off a pound 100 times, That's 100 pounds. 100 pounds makes a big difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and show it to you, and then I'll tell you what we're gonna do next. So here it is. This is the bottom side of it. I made the mistake of latching the hood when it didn't have the cable to release it, and I couldn't figure out a way to get in there and release the latch. So I cut this out to get it. I took the hood off of the truck, cut this out to get the latch out. So went back in, cleaned all that up. Got 5 holes here, 5 holes here, 3 holes over there, and then this ridge right here that used to all be the vertical part of the core support, it had some left on it. So I went in, cut that back as far as I could, took a flapper disc, cleaned it all up, cleaned up this side too, and it's ready to go on. So I think with that being done, I am done with all the lightening of body panels to get this part done, or get the front clip done. So the only piece I haven't touched is the bumper filler, and it's just a stamped single piece, and it don't weigh nothing. And I probably won't need it once you see what I'm gonna do to make the hood flip, or the front clip flip. But I need it for the look. So for the 3 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever it is that it weighs, I've taken enough weight off to compensate for keeping that. So next thing I gotta do is over here on the fenders on both sides, you'll see I got a mark right here. Now if you look real close, you can see the door starts up here, and the door curves out and then goes back in. Well, with that being that way, if I take this whole front clip and just try to lift it up, this down here is gonna hit the door. So what I did is I kind of visually looked and saw where this starts to become straight, where it's not curved out anymore, and I made a line. And then I went over here on this side and said, that should look pretty good. And I made a line over there. So I'm gonna tie these 2 lines together, and I'm gonna cut that piece off. Now, that's gonna look goofy as hell having the fender stop right there, isn't it? I'm not going to. I'm gonna leave this piece on the truck. It has a bolt, the lower fender bolt holds it. And then I'm gonna come in here, and I'm gonna run a brace from right about where my line is up to the body right here. And then I'm gonna see if I can do something to kind of brace that back. So this piece is gonna stay on the truck, or stay in place at all times. And then from here up is gonna fold up. So I already kind of roughly got that one marked. I need to get a straight edge on there, draw that line. I should probably put the brace in the front that I was talking about in there first, because then when I cut it, it'll hold that in place, and I got to do it anyway. So what difference does it make if I do it now or if I do it later? So I'm gonna go ahead and find some scrap metal. Just some little strips is all it's gonna take. I just need something to kind of hold that. Find some scrap metal, make some pieces, and then we'll brace those fenders, mark the fenders, cut the fenders, and then we can move on. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this, but I got my brace welded in, welded it to the pinch seam on the cab, put it behind, like where the inner fender would mount, drilled a hole through this, plug welded it up there. It's pretty stout. Now, like I said before, I'm gonna take a straight edge and make this line meet this line, draw the line, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna cut that all the way through. This piece will stay, this piece can come off. Once I get that cut, got some other things that I'm gonna do to make it right and make it better. And then, yeah, so I'm gonna get my straight edge and my marker. We'll mark that line out, and then we'll get to cutting. Okay, as you saw, I got that cut. I'm going to show you what it looks like now and tell you what the next step's going to be. Obviously, I have to go and do the other side the same way, but I'm kind of just doing one side at a time. So I'm going to get this side to the point of where I need it to be to move on, and then I'll go over and I'll do the other side, get it all finished up, and then we'll start working on our front bracing and our pivot, because I have to have these fenders completely done before I start working on the bracing and the pivot, or I'm gonna have to take the whole thing off to work on it versus just being able to take the fender off. So that's my whole thing. It's kind of seems like, to me even, it seems like I'm doing this in a weird pattern, but I have a reason that I'm doing it. I'm not saying it's the best way, I'm not saying that it's the smartest way, but it's making sense to me. So here it is. It's cut all the way through. As you can see, I got a nice door gap on this bottom here, but this kind of went in. So I'm going to take the fender off and do what I need to do here, which I'll show you guys all that. But then I'll rehang the fender with the bolts, and I'll get this all lined up so that it's right. So my door gap's out here. This door needs to be adjusted really bad. The door gap's all off, and there's a big dent right here that I've been meaning to pound out every time I had the fender off, and I haven't done it yet. So maybe this time I'll remember. But I'll get this door gap back where it needs to be. I might even adjust that door in so I can make sure everything's right. But we got this cut. This piece is braced. I have to brace it somehow at the back because it's way too loose. So I got my bolt tight at the bottom. I got my brace up front, which is holding it there, but the back is just flapping. So I have to put a brace back there too, which will be really easy to do while I have the fender off. So we'll go ahead and pull the fender back off, and I'll show you what I'm gonna do next. All right, probably see I got some marks on there. I've been doing a little R&D to see what's gonna work good for me, and I came up with this. It's not cut yet, it's not shaped yet, nothing like that, but it's a 16 gauge, and I got that little relief in it right there because it sits flat on here, and I kind of made it match the body there. And then I marked a line on the bottom side here on the fender. Now, I can't put 16 gauge on the bottom and 16 gauge on the top part of the fender and expect it to sit down like it needs to, because it's gonna hold a gap. So instead of cutting on my line, I'm gonna cut inside of it a little bit so that that sits inside this fender. And then I'll go and I'll tack weld it, and that'll be my brace. Once this is in here and tight, that's not gonna let that fender move. So it's gonna be my brace for the back part of my little piece here, and it's also gonna be the rest for the hood to sit on. Now, I'm using 16 gauge here because, I'll just go ahead and tell you, I'm gonna put a dowel pin that comes up out of this, and there's going to be a hole in the top part of the fender that comes down, so when the hood closes, it sits down over that little dowel pin, and it'll keep the fender from flopping in and out, and it'll help line it up. So using 16 gauge here, I'm going to take some 18 or some 20 gauge, whatever I got laying around, and I'll make a little piece to fill in here and a little piece to fill in back here, just so it doesn't have these rough sharp edges and so it looks a little bit better, but it'll weigh less, which I know. I'm skimping every little gram or whatever a low volume of weight is. I don't know, I don't pay attention to that stuff, but I can get this cut, I can get it tacked in there, and then we'll go to the fender and do something very similar, and it's gonna get us one step closer to the outcome I want. All right, well, losing daylight, and with the daylight going the warmth. Starting to get cold out here, it's starting to get dark. I do have some lights up here, but it's starting to get cold. But I did get the, we'll call it lower fender side done on the driver's side. I'll come back tomorrow and do what I got to do to the upper fender. It should be a little quicker and easier because there's not that much to it. Remount that fender, bing bang boom on the other side, remount that fender, and then we can start all the fun stuff that's actually going to show something. So I'm going to show you guys what I got done here, and then I'm going to head home for the day. So here it is. I got my 16 gauge piece in here tied into the body. I got 18, I think it's 18, might be 20 gauge, just as kind of a filler, so it's got more surface for the upper fender to sit on, and so it looks a little bit better when the hood's open and it's not just jagged metal out there. My brace, after I put this in, it's strengthened it up so much I could move it a little bit with my brace before, and now I can't. So it's solid. I jerk on it, it moves the whole truck. So happy with it. I did a little bit of work and got that dent out, at least up here where I needed to weld. I can take my stud gun, put a couple studs on there, pop that out a little bit, but it's already, I got it pretty close to where it's supposed to be. This ain't beautiful. It looks all right, but it's a race car. So it's only got to look good from 50 feet away. So yeah, that side's done. Then I do the other side. I'll do the upper fender first. I'll go through that process with you guys, and then I'll knock the other side out as quick as I can, and then we'll move on to the rest, but that'll be tomorrow. So I'll see you guys in a few. All right, it's the next day. I'm still just as pumped up about this project as I was when I started it yesterday. I haven't had a whole lot of time today, but I went ahead and got the passenger side to the same point that I got the driver's side at yesterday. It could still use a little bit of cleaning up on the welds and whatnot, but it's identical to the other side. So got that done, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. I set the cowl piece on here. As I was debating, I didn't know whether I wanted to weld this to the hood or mount it to the body or what I was gonna do, and I decided I'm gonna leave it mounted to the body and have the hood close up to it, and I'm gonna use the original mounting holes for the fenders for my hood pins. So there's gonna be a hood pin here, hood pin in the same spot on the other side. Now, with that being said, the fender goes underneath this. So I'm gonna have to trim the back off the fender so that it's straight with the flat part where the hood gap is. I'm gonna have to trim that back all the way up. And I also, once I get everything situated, I'm leaving this here for right now because I'm still using this to bolt the fender on to hold it while I do everything. But once I get it a little bit further along, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this back as far as I can and get it out of the way, because all I really need is this hole here. So I'll trim this back all the way back here. I might have to reattach the inner fender to the outer fender after I do it, but that's fine. I can tack that. I'm gonna end up cutting this off, just not right now. I need to come in and plate the bottom of this fender. Well, both fenders the same way that I did on the lower fender part, so that it has a surface to sit on the surface I put on there. And then I'm gonna drill a hole through the piece that I put on here. And once I put the fender back on, I'll mark that hole, take the fender off one more time, and then wherever that hole's marked on here, I'll go ahead and drill a hole through this 16 gauge, and I'm gonna put like a dowel pin sticking up. And then I'll have a receiver hole in the upper fender for that dowel pin, and that's gonna align my hood so I don't get any in and out play. And it's just gonna help, it's gonna keep it from the fenders flapping, and it's gonna keep it lined up where it's supposed to be. And then I'll have my hood pins up on the top that'll hold it down. I'll have my pivots in the front. Should be good. Don't know until I start driving the thing. Well, you know, it's not really gonna be driven, but till I start using the truck, and if I have problems, then I'll address them at that point. But for now, in my crazy little squirrel brain I got up here, seems like it's gonna work. So I'm gonna make a template for the plates that I'm putting on the bottom of the fenders, and I should be able to make one template, make two pieces, and it should fit both sides. I'll just have to flip it over. So hopefully that's the case. If that's not the case, I'm gonna make it the case, because if it's not, that means one of the fenders is out of true. And I know the driver's side fender has that crease and stuff in it, so I'm gonna make my template off the passenger side fender, which was in really good shape. And then I'm gonna straighten up the driver's side fender to match the template I make for the passenger side fender. And then right here where my bumper filler piece mounts, I need to extend this about 2.5 inches. And I need to tie that down, kind of box it, tie it to the outer fender structure. Because, well, we'll get to that when we get there. But this is all stuff I got to do to the fenders right now while they're off. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it, and I'll let you guys watch me do it. Well, it's getting to be that time again. I didn't get over here until about 1 o'clock because I had to go do some stuff with my wife this morning, and I had to go and pick up some supplies. And so it's about almost 4:30 now, so I got about 3.5 hours in today, and I wanted to get more done, but I made steady progress, and that's about all I can ask for. So I've been tinkering with this fender, and I have the passenger side fender done as far as I can think of. Something else may come up, but for now I think I got it. I got my flat welded across the bottom where it's going to meet the lower fender, the lower piece of the fender on the truck, Got my hole drilled in it for my alignment dowel I was telling you guys about. I got it shaved here so it'll fit with the cowl piece on. And then this was the first fender that I took the inner structure out of before I had the idea of making the flip up hood. So I had cut this back short, so it had just enough for that bumper filler piece to bolt on. And now that I'm gonna have to have bracing across there so that the hood, the front clip can flip, I welded a piece back on it and I boxed it into the fender. So I'm gonna do the other one over there, has a big tab left on it, but I'm gonna box it the same way just for some strength. And then you guys will see what I'm gonna do for the rest of my strength so that it can flip. And I mean, it's gonna be flimsy, but no different than if you had like a fiberglass one piece or something like that. They're flimsy, but by the time I get the upper piece of the core support that I worked on back in, get the hood welded to the fenders, I mean, that's all gonna add strength. So yeah, I got a pretty big mess to clean up. I got tools over there, welders, tools over there, all that stuff. Like to get it done before it gets dark and get home, spend some time with the family. And then tomorrow's Sunday, so I won't be here. And then I'll be back Monday morning, and hopefully Monday I can get this finished up. I was really, in my mind, this was a one-day project, and now we've got probably about 11 hours in it, and we've made it this far. So I'm going to clean up, go home. First thing Monday morning, I'll be back. We'll be back on this project and see what we can make happen. All right, well, I'm back on this thing. Not feeling the best today. I got a pinched muscle in my neck or something. Whole right side feels kind of funny and it's giving me a headache, but I'm gonna work through it. I wanna get it done. I need to keep moving. So probably gonna be a little slower than normal today, but we're still gonna get after it. I went and got a sheet of 16 gauge metal this morning so I can finish up the other fender, because I was running low doing the one that I already did and kind of welding pieces together to make what I needed and all that kind of stuff, trying to save money, but just gave in, went and got a sheet, a small sheet, enough to do that fender. But anyways, I got over here this morning, set my passenger fender up on there, marked the hole. I took a 3/8, it's really an old exhaust bolt's what it is, and cut the threads off of it, cleaned it up, put it on there, welded it in, and I'm getting ready to set the fender back up there and see how it does. I might have to clean those welds up a little bit so it sits like I want it to, but aside from that, should be fine. So I'm gonna set this fender up there, see if I can get this fender mounted, and then I'll show you guys what we got. And then I'll go and get the other fender all ready and get it put up there. Worked out pretty good the way I decided to do it. I'm happy with it. Still using the 2 top bolts just to keep it where it needs to be for now. But my alignment down here didn't turn out too horribly bad. It's got a nice line. It's sitting like I want it to. Lined up at the back, lined up at the front. It's on that dowel. I'm not worried about there being a little bit of a gap right there because it's gonna split there anyways. So yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm really excited with the way this is going. Wish it was going faster, but you know, stuff takes time. I'm trying to do it right. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to breeze through that other fender. It's gonna take me probably an hour or better to get everything cut out and welded in and everything else I gotta do. But I'm gonna get it done and we'll get it put on and then we'll go from there. All right, well, it took some time, but I finally made some progress. I'm super stoked. I think I have both fenders on for the last time. I'm probably gonna have to take them off to do a little trimming once I get to where it can flip, and I'll probably take the whole front clip off to do some welding so I don't have to turn into a contortionist and weld upside down in a little crevice I can barely get to. So I'm the type of person, if it comes apart and I can flip it over and get to it easy, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys where I'm at. I went ahead and roughly welded up the light on this side because I needed to weld my box at the back of it, so it needs a bunch of work, but for right now it's good. Got that all in there with my pin, fenders mounted, got my bumper filler piece back in to kind of hold it. I need to take some measurements off one of these other trucks I got out here and find out what the distance is supposed to be right here and how to center it. Once I get that done, we're really gonna start moving along. I'm gonna go ahead and put my, we're gonna call it the upper hood brace in, since it's not really a core support anymore. I can go ahead and get that put in there, and I'll still be able to move the front end side to side so I can center it, and then I can start with my braces that I'm gonna use for my hinges. And then once I get my brace in there, I can figure out where I'm gonna have to cut the front of the frame off for the hinges and to make it pivot. So we're at that point where it's final assembly, more or less. I don't think I'm gonna have to take a whole bunch of stuff apart anymore, but I might. Once again, I've never done this before. I'm kind of swinging for the fences and hoping it goes over. But yeah, so there it is. Both fenders are done, mounted, and I'm going to put the upper fender brace in, and then we'll keep on moving on. All right, I got my upper fender brace, core support put in, and I put 2 bolts in it because I left provisions for 2 bolts when I cut it all up, fenders and the core support. And then I went ahead and just put tack welds up top in the corners. I got a lot of area down here that I can clean up and weld on both sides. But I'm just putting the 2 little tacks in for now, because if something's not working out or for some reason I got to take it back apart or whatever the case may be, it's easy to cut those 2 tacks, but it's making it a lot sturdier right now. So I got those in there. Next thing I need to do is I got this 1/8 inch thick 2x2 square tubing, and that's what I built these boxes for. Right here on both sides, I'm gonna run that 2x2 tubing behind the filler all the way across, tie it into this one as well, and that's gonna be part of my support for where the hinge mechanism's gonna go. I'm gonna get that welded in there across, and then about even with the frame horns on each side, I'm gonna come up with another piece of 2x2 and run it from that up to this flat here on the bottom of the top of the core support. I don't even know what to call that thing. It's the piece that's up there doing its thing. So you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, 2x2 across, 2x2 up to that, and that's what my hinges are gonna mount to. So that's gonna be the main structural part of this whole flip forward front end. So as far as there not being a lot of strength on the sides, on the fenders or whatever, it doesn't really matter, as long as I have plenty of strength where the flip mechanism is. That's what's gonna hold all the weight. So that 2x2 square tubing, along with the pretty stout top of the core support here, should provide me the strength that I need, and we'll be able to flip it and life will be good. So I'm gonna take a measurement from the inside of that box to the inside of that box. I'm gonna get my tube cut, and then I'm going to tack it into place. I'm not solid welding up anything from this point on until everything's done and I know it works. So I'll get that cut, I'll get that set in there, I'll get a couple solid tacks on it, and then I can make my braces that go up to the core support, get a few solid tacks on that, and then once I get that done, then I can take measurements, make sure everything's centered and squared and where I need it to be, and then I can cut the front of the frame horns off and we can start putting the hinges on. As far as the hood goes, I'm leaving it off for now because it's not really any part of this other than the finished product. Like, I literally just need to set the hood on once it's done and put a couple tacks on it, tack it to the fenders, tack it to the core support up here, just enough that it's gonna hold it on. I don't have to solid weld it together or nothing like that, because like I said, most of my strength should come from up here in the front. Now, if I get it just tacked on and it seems real flimsy or something like that and I need some more support, then I may go ahead and put some more weld on it, but I'm gonna put enough on it that it's not gonna break. With flex, it's gonna stay, and that should be good enough. So no point in wasting welding wire to weld the whole thing, and I'm trying to keep it looking fairly stock, so I want to still have my fender gaps here from the hood to the fender, just like the gap here. It's not going to line up perfect because all this stuff is contorted and tweaked now, but I want to still have a gap there so it looks stock, looks normal from 5 feet away, you know. And then it's going to have a grill and headlights and all that stuff back in it. They're not going to be stock, but they're going to be there, and it's just going to look like the front of a C10 until we put on the magic show and make it do the flippy thingy. So I'm going to get that measured up, get it put in there, get it tacked in place, cut my braces that go up to the core support, get them tacked up in place, and then we'll do the next thing. All right, I went ahead and made my first vertical brace without filming it because I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, because once again, I'm just throwing stuff together to see what happens. But it's turning out pretty good so far. Hopefully it'll keep working. So I'll show you what I did. Where this bar went and where my flat spot that I wanted to mount to on the core support were offset. This bar's further forward, which is fine. So I went ahead and notched 1 inch out of this 2-inch square tube, and I ran it down about 1.25 inches. So now I can get solid weld all along here, all the way down on both sides. And when I put my hinges in that I'm mounting down here to the frame, which I thought this was going to be closer to the frame, so now I'm going to have to rethink all that. But when I put that in, I can maybe mount my hinge back on this, because my part of my hinge that's going to mount to this is going to be straight vertical, so I can mount to this part instead of trying to figure out how to mount it to a flat on the back. So it's going to be just as strong, should help me out. Now I got one more of these to make. As you can see, it's just tacked in. Like I said, I'm only tacking everything because I can come back and weld it up later. I'll do a little time lapse of making the other one and getting it tacked in place, and we're getting really close. I mean, after I get these uprights in, I'll know where I need to whack the front of the frame off at. Once I get the front of the frame whacked off, we can figure out how we're going to mount our hinges. And once we get our hinges mounted, it'll be ready to flip. At that point, once I get the hinges set up and get them where they need to be, I need to set the hood on to tie the back of the fenders together. But I don't want to put the hood on yet because I still need to weld more on this, which I may be able to get some more weld down here. That would be okay. It's already bolted, it's already tacked. The hood's going to be welded. so I probably don't need any more weld on it. I might run a little bit across the bottom like I just showed you, and then I'm getting excited. We're getting close. Like, once I get that other brace in, tacked in, figure out the hinges, tack the hood on, and see if all this work that I did and this idea that running around in my head like a squirrel chasing nuts pans out. So I'm excited. So I'll get that other upright brace cut out and tacked in. We'll get it in there, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, so I got my crossbar in, my braces are in. You may notice I've got it sitting on a 2x4. I took some measurements off of Cherry Pie, and where it's sitting right now, it's centered side to side like it's supposed to be, and sitting on that 2x4, the top of my bumper filler from the frame is exactly what it is on Cherry Pie. So there's a little bit of a gap between the 2x4 and my brace on this side, but when I go to mount my hinge, I'll push that down where it needs to be, and that should, everything's kind of tweaked a little bit because I took so much bracing out of it and welded on it and everything else, so it's kind of tweaked. So as I put it together, I need to tweak it closer to where it needs to be, and then weld it up, and then we shouldn't have any problems. So for the pivot point, hinge, flip selector, whatever you want to call it, I've decided to go with these. These are the factory hood hinges. This one's from the other side. I have to flip them side to side for what I'm doing, but they're the hood hinges that went in here that the hood actually pivoted on, and then you have your spring here that holds it up. But this is the actual hood pivots. They're pretty stout, they're pretty heavy duty, and so what I'm gonna do, they got this, we'll call it a V shape in them, and I want that to be like this. So it kind of brings the hood out and down at the same time when it rotates. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut the frame off to where I need it lengthwise for these to sit right on the end like that. And then I'm gonna drill these two holes here and here where this used to mount up on the cowl, and I'm gonna bolt it to the frame. That way, if I need to pull an engine or do anything, if I need to do anything where the hood's gonna be in the way, even flipped up, I can take 4 bolts out and I can lift the whole setup off. Therefore, it becomes a lift off one-piece hood. But the reason I was originally gonna go with the one-piece lift off hood, and I may have told you this, so if I did already, just go along with me because I'm dumb and don't remember. But the reason I decided to go with the flip hood is, one, it's a lot cooler than just welding everything together. And two, a lot of times when I go and do stuff, I'm by myself. Well, being that I'm making this one-piece hood out of steel, it would be pretty dang hard for me to lift it off, let alone get it back on by myself. So I decided to go with the tilt. Somebody mentioned the idea to me and it sounded way cooler than a lift off anyways. So that's what we're doing. So right now I'm trying to figure out exactly where I need to cut the frame to make these go where they need to go, so that I can set this part of the hinge right up against the side of this bar. And then when I get it set right up there where I need it, I've got all that room to weld on this side. I can weld on the back side. I can get a little weld to my cross brace here, and it'll be plenty stout. So first thing I have to do, I got to get these old course port mounts off because they're in the way right now. And then once I get them off, then I can kind of get the hinge more where I need it and get stuff starting to line up. And then once I get it lined up, I'll be able to make a line exactly where I'm going to need my hinge to go, and then I can go ahead and lop the frame off right there. And once I lop the frame off, it's all downhill from there, because I just need to, I'll get my frame lopped off, I'll get my hinges set on there where I want them to sit, I'll get the hinge tacked like I did everywhere else, just tacked to this bar. And then once I get that everything where it's supposed to be, double check my measurements, make sure they're all right, then I can drill the 4 holes in the top of the frame, stick my bolts in, bolt it on, and then we'll be in full flip mode. So we're getting close. I'm getting excited. We're gonna do the hinges, we're gonna set the hood on, tack it in place, and then this thing will be ready to do some magical things, hopefully. So we'll see what happens. I'm gonna knock those mounts off real quick. You know how to do it. Cut the cross in the rivets, blast them with the air chisel, bada bing, bada boom, they're gone. And yeah, so I'll do that. And then I'll figure out where I need to cut and get that done. I gotta slow myself down a little bit. I'm super pumped. I can't wait to see this thing flip. And I've just been hammering away at it and not updating you guys, so sorry I'm being a bad YouTuber, but this video's probably getting long enough anyways, and the whole reason you're watching is because you want to see the hood flip, right? Well, we're getting close. So I went ahead and lopped off the end of my frame rails, and before anybody catches me and starts to tear me up in the comments, I did say that I was going to bolt the hinges to the frame, and I am still going to bolt the hinges to the frame. I just can't get a drill bit through to do it, so I just put some tacks on there. When I fold it up, I'll drill those, bolt them, cut the tacks off, and then we can then it'll be good. Got my hinges just tack welded to the bracing. Don't want to permanently weld anything until I make sure it's going to work. Got this side done too. And last thing I have to do before I try to tilt this hood or front end, is take the bolts out that are holding the back of the fenders and put the hood on. So I have to take out these top bolts before I put the hood on, but I can leave these bolts in here just kind of holding it till after I get the hood on. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the hood on. My back is still bothering me really bad. I don't know if I want to try to do it myself or if I want to call my buddy down the road, see if he can come give me a hand. But next time you guys see this thing, that hood over there on the ground will be on it, and we'll be ready to flip it. So hang tight, it's coming. All right, got the hood set on. Put about an inch of weld there. Inch of weld there. I didn't get that clean very good. It was dirty, kind of made that weld a little nasty. Got a weld there. Got a decent weld up here. Not gonna say that's all the weld that I'm gonna put on it, but that should be enough for a trial run. Then my buddy came over and helped me put the hood on. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, before we put the hood on, we already flipped it up because he wanted to see it, and we just made sure it was gonna work before I welded the hood on. But I apologize for not showing it to you guys first, but just kind of happened. Why we had it tilted up, he had the idea of welding some stops on here so that when you flip it, it will come up against those stops and it can't rotate any further, which that is there. It should work for now, but in the long haul, I'm gonna put some kind of limiting straps or something like that on to catch it when it goes over. And hopefully I wanna use, we were talking about like a tailgate hinge. That way when it comes all the way open, it kind of locks and you got to pick it up to let it go down. So if you're underneath the hood working or something, the wind can't blow it closed on you. So I got the bolts out here, obviously, because I had to put the hood on. And these are already out too. So right now this hood is just sitting on the dowels on the fender, and it's attached to the hinges up here like it's gonna be. I mean, I'm gonna have some hood pins up top there somewhere, but this is the majority of it right here. So I'm gonna set the other camera up. We're gonna roll this thing up and see how it does. I haven't done it by myself and I haven't done it with the hood on, so this is still kind of a first try. So let's see what happens. All right, there it is, sitting on my stops. Like I said, I don't want that to be my only stop, but for now it's cool. It's holding the hood, and that thing really is light for what it is. I still got to go back and cut these off because they make it kind of rough when you go to put it back down. They kind of catch, and they kind of catch opening it. So I'll cut those off, and yeah, it's beyond cool. I'm super stoked about it. I don't even really know what to say, but when I got it up, it'll make it a lot easier for me to weld some of that. I still got to weld everything up, so that's not a huge deal. I still got to drill my holes and mount that, but it's getting late for today and I really want to get this video out, so I can come back another time and finish welding and cut some stuff off and tie up all the loose ends. I just wanted to get it working, and it works. I mean, this truck's got a long ways to go. I can weld that stuff up and cut that stuff off anytime, but I told you I was gonna build a flip forward front end, and I did, and it looks sick. I want to go a full 90. I might have got my stops a little bit too far forward because it's past 90, but that's okay because then it's got more weight hanging off the front and I don't got to worry about it closing up on me. And look at all the room for activities. Man, I can climb in here, work on the front of the motor without leaning over nothing. I can get in here and do whatever I want. So I'm gonna flip back to the camera on the tripod. I'm gonna put the hood back down and see how that goes doing it by myself. I'm probably gonna have to go to both sides and line those dowels up because I didn't make the holes real big because I wanted them to be fairly tight. But yeah, I'm gonna close that hood. I'll get back with you guys and we'll finish this one up. And there it is. She's back closed again. Everything lines up pretty good. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. Man, I'm super excited about this. I've never done anything like this before, and didn't have anything but a redneck design in my head when I started, and I'm really, really happy with the way it came out. The only thing I bought to do this was this tube right here, a cross brace tube, and this tube here. All this 16 gauge I use for boxing and the 18 gauge I use for that, I had laying around, but honestly, if you wanted to do it, you could cut it out of an old hood or an old door or whatever. And I bought 8 foot of that tube for $45. So I reused the hood hinges. I used some old exhaust bolts that I had in my bolt bin for the dowels over there. It really, 45 bucks. I got a flip forward front end, and it doesn't weigh that much. I mean, it's awesome. You can do this yourself. You might even be able to do it better than me, which if you can, that's great. I want you to try. Get out there and do stuff. I mean, like I said, I'd never done this before. I didn't have any instructions on how to do this, nothing. It's just an idea that popped in my head. My dad kind of said, hey, what about that? And I was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna try it. How can I make that work? And I had 5 different design ideas before I started, and everything kind of, you know, played out into, oh, well, this is going like this, so I should probably do this. And this is going like this, so I should probably do this. And this will work better than that. And I just did it. And aside from needing to do some welding and some trimming, it's done. I've got flip forward, all factory sheet metal front end on an 84 GMC Sierra. And I'm super excited about it. But I hope you guys had as much fun watching me do this as I did doing it. I hope maybe it gives you some inspiration to go out and do something crazy that you'd never think you were gonna do, because honestly, it wasn't that hard. And if I would have screwed it up, I would have had to get some more body panels. I mean, these weren't in the greatest condition to begin with. That driver fender was whacked. The hood, it's all whacked. I mean, that's all stuff I can body work, but it's not like it was perfect to start out with. So if I would have ruined it, oh well, I'd have got some other stuff someday, or taken it off of another truck or whatever. But I think it's awesome. I hope you guys think it's awesome. Thank you so much for watching. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.